right. That brings us to the conclusion of Love and Torah. All right, now your assignment is to go back to the beginning and listen to the whole thing 5 or 6 times. Why are you laughing? That's the only way you can understand what I said. Go back and listen to the whole thing at least 5 or 6 times, okay? Mark's still trying to figure out darkness and light after 8 times. So, it takes a lot, okay? All right, you got to listen to this thing over and over again. Okay, so we're going to go now to the Afterburn. This is where I allow you guys the opportunity, and I encourage you actually to have the opportunity to ask questions and make comments about the teaching. This can be about this part or about the whole teaching in general. That's fine now that we're finished. And so we'll begin with Craig Lane.
Yes, I have a couple points. One, what you were saying about avoidance and how avoidance doesn't cure the problems that we're having. The same thing is actually true with diabetes. The avoidance of sugar will lead you to think that you have actually cured or healed diabetes. In fact, you haven't. You're just avoiding the problem. Where the right types of sugar at the right times, and a lot of that can help your body to process that and actually heal from diabetes. And so it's not the avoidance of the thing, it's the avoidance of maybe a wrong type of sugar.
I understand. It's great. It's a good metaphor. Yeah.
Love could be the same way. Mm-hmm. And another thing I've heard said is that if I am close to Elohim and I love him and he loves me, and you are close to Elohim and he loves you and you love him, then how can we be distant from each other? And that is certainly a problem that if there is a distance there, that I think that's it's probably a problem with the person and not with Elohim.
All right, Steve.
All right, there's several things. I'm going to see if I can clear up. So start with, so for me, above all else, love is demonstrated, not just spoken about, yeah?
Yeah, love is an action. It's not just a verbal expression. It's an action.
And then in John 17, you talked about relationships, but so for me, or for I think maybe most of us, it's hard to build a relationship without trust. So how has that come about as an increase?
Say it again.
How does trust come about as an increase in relationships?
Well, I mean, look, relationships are very complex things, and we're not going to address all of those complexities, in this format. But if if we look at the example of Scripture, most of what you see flows out of Israel learning to trust Yahweh, okay? If you don't have trust, you don't have relationship. Well, that's not true. You have a bad relationship or a dysfunctional relationship, okay? I've talked to couples who are challenged, okay? And I tell them very often about how bad your challenge may be at the moment. And if you think I'm talking about you, I am, but not, okay? But this is something that happens every week. So, I mean, I'm talking about a lot of people. Every week I deal with this. Husband and wife having a problem. The only way it's ever going to fix is at some point they have to start trusting each other that they're actually going to make the effort to fix it. If they can't trust, it might as well just give up. So trust is a core and critical element in there, okay? So all of you that I counsel that all think this is about you, listen and pay attention, okay? And if it's not, but you should have counseled, but you know this is about you, listen. If you get to the point where you're struggling, it's often because there's a trust issue. And there was a breach of trust. See, Yahweh, you know how he treated breach of trust? He buried him in the desert. Okay? But then again, he is trustworthy and we're not. Now, we become him, we become trustworthy. You understand the difference? Okay, so yeah, trust is a big thing. Okay, so maybe I need to do a teaching on bitachon, on trust. Okay? All right, I'll write that down. All right, go ahead.
All right, and then it says on 17:8, it says, you gave to me and I gave to them, and even if they received, we receive what was given? You talked about that, but it seems like a lot of times when we're dealing with each other, what is given or what is shared might not have been shared correctly. So, and I think that's an opportunity to build the relationship rather than sever a relationship, because that's also the time that you see relationships severed, when things aren't shared or conveyed correctly in the wrong manner and stuff like that. So,
all right, look, let's see if I can put that in English. No, Steve, you make a really good point there. Look, the problem is bad communication leads to bad results, okay? Because then people are sort of forced to jump to wrong conclusions, or any kind of conclusion, and likely get it wrong if you jump into conclusions. But of course, we don't communicate because we already are pretty convinced of how the reaction is going to be, and then we're jumping to a conclusion there as well, and we're not trusting, and we have fear, and so all of that leads to bad communication. And so this is really a problem. Well, I mean, I've tried to tell her, I've tried to tell him, but then this happens this way. So then you need to come in. And so this is maybe a good lesson for those of you who have not utilized the counseling. But if you come in here, and usually this is a husband-wife problem more than anything else, or a parent-child problem if there's like an adult child, where if you came with, in front of me, my number one job at that point is to help you hear each other. Okay? Help you actually hear and receive what the other person's actually saying. And so I start showing you how to do that, so that when you're not with me, you can do that. So that you can actually, so when somebody will say something, the other person's not judging, I say, hold on. Is that what you were saying to the first person? They say, well, no, that's what I was saying. Okay, so let them explain, go back and forth. Don't just react to what you think they're saying. Okay? Let them actually say what they mean. Oh, but they're lying and this. Well, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to start telling the truth, or we're not going to get anywhere. If we can't get honest about things, there's no point. Now, if you're at the point where there's no point, you might as well be honest, because it's not going to hurt anything, because you're already ready to split it up. So why not let's bring the truth into there if you're already almost, you can't be afraid the truth is going to wreck it. It's already wrecked. Okay? We have way too much fear, and that fear and trust can't sit in the same place. And so that really becomes a problem. And then we communicate poorly, because now we're being so careful with our words, or we're not careful at all because we're being just so emotional, and so we're not careful, that it leads to really, bad results. Man, our communication is so challenged as human beings. So challenged. Unbelievable. You say something and the person reacts and you're like, why'd you do that? I said, because you said this. You're like, I didn't say that, but oh my gosh. Okay? Yes, you did. No, I didn't. And it's not always the receiver's fault. Some of you are really good at saying whatever you're saying and forgetting that the first half of what you were saying only happened in your head. You're laughing because you know it's true, or you've experienced it from somebody else. Because I've had people say something to me, I'm like, well, I said, no, you never said that. Yes, I did. No, maybe it was in your thoughts, and you thought you said it because you thought it, and then you said the other half of it, but that part never came out of your mouth. And you got to recognize that sometimes as arguments are going or discussions are going, you've got so much going on in your head, you don't always recognize whether or not you actually said it or not. You thought it real loud, but you didn't say it necessarily. All right? And I've had to tell people, I said, okay, I'll believe you that that's what you were trying to get to, but just so you know, that never came out of your mouth. So you got to be aware that sometimes that can happen. Now, I believe that's what you were trying to do, fine. We'll fix it here, we'll clarify it here, but, we think things a lot and we just assume that the other person knows what we're talking about. Okay? So it can be tough. What else?
All right. And then in 14, John 17:14, it says, I gave them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of the world. But I've seen a lot of times how their actions are words that aren't of his word. We use that as a crutch to be allowed to be hated. So maybe we should check on what we're actually using. This is properly used.
Okay. All right. And actually, I should have said this. I wish I had said this during the teaching, but we'll say it here anyway. He said, I gave them your word, right? So that should not just be simply, I gave the disciples, but let's take him to be the one at Sinai giving the word. Okay, let's take him to all of the prophets speaking, giving them the word. He says, I gave them the word. He is the word giver, the word deliverer. And he says they're his Father's words, but he gives it. Which brings us back to the argument I make in the Father and the Son, that the Son has done all these things. The Son is the one giving the Torah on Sinai. That's why when he says, if you love me, guard my commands, we know what commands he's talking about. All of them. I'm the lawgiver. Now, it's not my law, it's his law, it's the Father's law, but I'm giving it to you. Okay? And the Father's expecting me to watch over it and guard it and be there to see that you treat it correctly or that you get the proper consequences of not treating it correctly. All right, what else?
Just two more things, if you don't mind. I did miss something on 17:13. It says, my joy is complete in them, a more fulfilled joy, a greater level of joy than what we know, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then finally on 17:21, it's just a comment. So I can't believe we can be at one with him when we serve our needs first.
Right. We have to remember that we're called according to his purpose. And his purpose is that we submit to him, not that he submit to us. Okay? All right. Ashley.
Do I have a voice? I do. Okay. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I was sitting over there and I was looking through all this stuff and it dawned on me. In our counseling sessions, I'm always throwing out the why word. Why me? Why this? Why does this have to happen? You know, and I struggled with Yahweh can't really love me if I would put in like all these different things, like, you know, sleeping in abandoned buildings that happen to catch on fire, or being shot or stabbed or whatever, you know, all those different things. And I realized that it was like, in a way, it was a blessing because he put me there, but yet he also took me out of it because I'm still here. And by me being there, it appreciates it because it's like when I'm alone in that moment, I'm here and I can appreciate still being alive and still being able to talk and still being able to go forward and do his word. You know, I find it funny, you know, growing up in a generational, being drug addict and all of this, I'm allergic to opiates. You know, I'm allergic to pork. I'm allergic to a lot of these things. And I find it very, what's the word? Coincidental that, you know, that's how it is. And so I can't screw up even if I wanted to, and I'm thankful for it, and I'm thankful for all the things that have gone, because it's like I'm here, and you know, for the people that's out there, I can say, hey, look, there's a light to the other side. You're still here, and you still have a chance to go home.
Amen. Amen. All right. One thing, okay? He allowed, not put. He may have put, but let's just, it's better to think in your mind that he allowed you to go through those horrible things, but then he did specifically pull you out. Okay? He didn't put you in the abandoned house with the fire and the places where you got shot or stabbed and all the other things. He allowed those things to happen. But he also kept you safe. You didn't die during any of those things because he had a plan that at some point he would pull you out. Okay? So, you know, don't always say he caused when we don't know if he caused. At the very least, he allowed. It's a much safer place to be. I don't want to say he caused something I don't know he caused. Okay? I know he pulled you out because you couldn't get there without that. Scripture tells us that. He has to open your eyes. He has to touch you. The other stuff that happened in your life, he allowed it to happen. Some of it did he cause? Maybe. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out which is which, and neither should you, okay? Otherwise, you start thinking, well, why would he put me in this place? Well, because he didn't necessarily. Okay, so it's just a wording that's important, and wording in your own head is important because it's the way you will then address and feel about something if you feel like he did it to you as opposed to allowing it to happen, knowing he would get you to where you need to go.
Then if I may ask, what's the true definition of cause and the true definition of allow? Because to me, they're in that moment kind of the same thing.
Okay, so you're living your life, and in that life where you started off, and there was drugs, and there was all kinds of violence and other things, okay? He didn't put you necessarily in that house that burned, okay? He didn't cause the person to stab you. He didn't cause the person to shoot you. Now, he allowed you to be born in a family like this. He allowed you to be in a world like that. He allowed you to be in an experience like that. But he also, what he may have done, if you want to talk about causing, he may have kept you from dying in all those things that could have killed you. Okay? So that you could get to hear and you can say what you said to encourage everyone out there who thinks, I have lived such a screwed up life and had so many horrible things happen. How could he ever just love me and want me and everything else? And you could say, hang in there, which is what you did, and that was beautiful. All right? Okay. All right, Taylor, and then we're going to go to you, Rob, okay?
I have 4 questions. First,
This isn't Passover. Sorry, this is a Passover joke, the 4 questions. Okay, never mind.
first with Romans 8:28. Like all things work together for those, you know. With that verse, I'm trying to like figure it out because I want to understand it fully because I think I still have like a Christian mindset with it.
Well, just take Ashley's example.
Okay.
All those things that happened to her eventually worked for the good as she now came to believe in Yeshua properly. Okay?
But the point I get to with that, and I understand that part, but like, is it the same? You said it's only for those who are on the path. And when we get off the path, is that still...
All bets are off.
Okay.
Now, he still may be using it to get you back on the path and allowing it. So in that case, it ultimately will work for the good, but if you don't get back on the path, it won't.
Okay. Got that.
Okay? So everything that happens in your life potentially can work for the good. All of it. Provided you take advantage of it getting you back where you need to be. If you don't, it's not going to work for the good. Okay? Everything he allows to happen to you or causes to happen to you that's negative has one purpose, to get you to wake up and get back on the path. If you do, it all works for the good. If you don't, it doesn't. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the next one I had, you said that when people pray, they shouldn't pray for something to be taken out of their lives unless it's something that they can't handle or is too much. And I was trying to distinguish between what's considered too much for someone and then, because I thought we could handle, like, he wouldn't give us anything we couldn't handle. So, like, what did
Which
you...
means that almost everything that comes in your life, you should be praying for, how do I get through this, not how can you take it away from me.
Okay.
Okay, almost everything. Now, what you can say is, Father, if this is something I can handle, but I can't see it, then help me see how I can handle it. Give me the strength to handle it, as opposed to our normal default is rescue. Please rescue. We just want rescue. Deliver me out of. Save me, help me, That's okay that we feel that way, but ask him to help you to make the choices that get you out of the problem as opposed to him just taking you out of it and moving you out of it. Okay?
Gotta keep that mindset. Okay. And then...
Listen, when you struggle with self-esteem or self-capacity, meaning like you're capable of doing a bunch of, like you just feel like I'm not capable, then your tendency is to just feel like I can't handle this. Because you feel like maybe you can't handle most things. And Yahweh's trying to show you you're way more capable than you think, and that you can handle things more than you think. And he's going to put you through things that are meant to work. And look, if I put you in a situation where, let's say you were in my backyard, and I had a bunch of wood that was cut, big logs, and I told you I wanted you to move that pile over to this other side over here. And each log, let's say, weighed 50 pounds. A big, heavy wood. And you're thinking, I never lift anything in my life. I'm weak. I don't do any exercise or anything. That you may think, there's no way. But you know what? What if I showed you a smaller pile first with 10-pound pieces, and you move those, and next thing you know, you got stronger, and you move the 20-pound pieces. And then you get stronger, and you move the 50-pound pieces. He's going to put you through things. By the way, here's the good news, bad news. The good news is that whatever you're going through is only a test. The bad news is what's coming is much worse. The good news after this, so it's good news, bad news, good news. The good news is if you pass the test, you'll gain what you need to pass the next one. Okay? Because you're supposed to develop the muscle, emotional, physical, spiritual, whatever muscle you're strengthening, right? That metaphorically, right? To get to where you're able to handle the thing that is coming. Okay, so when he says he doesn't allow you to go through anything you can't handle, that's because he's picking things that are, see, you want to think of it as something you can handle, like, oh, that's no big deal. I can't, no, he wants to stretch you. You just don't believe. He knows you can handle it, not necessarily you. So when he says he's not going to put on you anything that you're not able, it doesn't mean you will think you're able. It means he knows you're able, even if you can't see it. That we need to embrace. Because after you move those 10-pound logs for a while, you realize they don't really weigh anything. Next thing you go, you start trying the 20s, and the 20s aren't so bad. You move a bunch of those, you think, I can handle the 50s. But in the beginning, then you watch yourself moving the whole pile of 50s, you think, wow, 6 months ago, I never thought I could do that. I couldn't even move one. I just moved the whole pile. But it took practice and exercising that thing, right? So in this case, we're talking about physical muscles. What about exercising your emotional capacity to handle adversity? Okay? We need to strengthen that muscle too. Because all of you, to whatever degree, I think, suffer from a limiting capacity to handle adversity. And so he keeps giving you adversity so you can get that muscle to finally build up. Instead, what you do is you fall apart and have a meltdown, and then you want to just be rescued. Instead of saying, Father, I don't see it, but I believe you. If I can handle this, I don't see it. Show me, help me, strengthen me. You know what, get counsel. One of the jobs that I have as a counsel is to help you when you don't see it, to kind of break it down into smaller bites or something, right? Okay, next.
Thank you for that. And then I'm not sure if you did mention it when you said this, but with Yeshua praying for his disciples and then praying for us as well, right? I'm correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand what was the meaning. Like, I know that he prayed, like, Father, help them, while they're in the world, keep them in you and stuff. But I'm trying to understand why he prayed that. If he didn't pray that prayer, would have still happened since he was about to die? And what was the reason for him to pray?
All right, go back to the beginning of what I said in the teaching, so you have to go back and listen to it, but I'll explain it again. He did this so they would hear him say it.
Okay.
It's not because he said it didn't change anything. He could have never said it. It all would have played out just fine. He wanted them to hear his words to the Father and get encouragement and strength out of that. Okay? So it was for their benefit to hear the prayer. Yeshua already knew he and the Father were so achad that whatever he asked, as Yeshua says to the disciples, if you ask in my authority, if you ask in my name, I will do it if you and I are in the right relationship. He was already in the right relationship with the Father. He knew the Father would do these things. He wanted them to hear it so that we could then see it in writing. Because if they heard it, they wrote it. So that we could be encouraged as those who believe in him through them. Okay? What else?
And then the last one, I kind of had this mindset in Christianity as well. And I was trying to see when I was talking about that conversation I had with those girls about what it meant to be set apart in the world and everything. does that strictly just mean, and I'm sorry if you said this too, I'm trying to keep track of everything you say in teaching, but does that just mean us following like just Torah? That's strictly the thing that's going to set us apart? Like, I'm trying to see what's the difference if someone is like kind and loving, and then with the thing that set us apart would be kind and loving and also following Torah while they're just kind and loving. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so what makes us different is the full package, okay? Because like there are people out there that have pieces of this. Look, you've got a lot of Jews out there that have a lot of the Torah commandments. Okay, you got a lot of everybody's, I mean, we'll just say everybody's, whether they're secular or any kind of religion, who are nice and they're gentle and they're kind and they're respectful. I mean, they could be in any belief system and do all that. It's let this mind be in you, and then the behavior come forth out of that mind that is of Yeshua. And so it's the package of that. So yes, so if we're not being of the fruit of the Spirit, loving, gentle, kind, peaceful, joyful, all those kind of things, certainly that's not going to make us stand out. But of course, if you are those things, well, worldly people can have those things too, in certain circumstances. But when you add the full package, we believe in Messiah and do those things. We observe different days and do those things. We eat differently and do those things. So it's the full package. Good question. All right, live stream.
Okay, that's from my wife, Tamara. It says, how do you know that Yahweh has circumcised our hearts? Is it that we no longer struggle with sin?
I think you might need to go back to the heart of the matter teaching. I don't know where I really covered that. But the idea of circumcising the heart is what? What is circumcision? It's a cutting away of flesh, right? It's a cutting away of flesh. So when you're circumcising the heart, which is a metaphor, obviously, instead of a physical thing that you do, you are cutting away fleshly behaviors, emotions, thought processes. So you're removing from you, because when you remove the flesh in circumcision, you're removing it from your body, right? So you're removing it from you, things of the flesh. So it's not that you don't sin, which means your heart is circumcised. It means that you're removing more and more, because the circumcision of the heart, unlike circumcision of flesh, is not all done at once. Because you're not going to recognize there's more flesh to remove the first time you start cutting it away. I mean, there's some easy and obvious things that you figure out when he first pops your bubble, but there's other things that you don't figure out for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, as you learn more and more and recognize more and more that you have parts of you that are not Yeshua-like. So think of it more like, I'm going to give an example from, I think it was Michelangelo said this. You know, somebody asked him once about when he takes a big block of granite and how how does he know to sculpt the horse, And he goes, simple, I just cut away every piece that doesn't look like a horse. So think of it more like chipping away all the parts of you that don't look like Yeshua. Okay? So it's not like circumcision of the flesh, which is a ceremony that's done once, and it's complete at that time. The circumcision of the heart is more of a chiseling away, piece by piece, all the things so that by the time you're done, you look like Yeshua. Okay? Amen? Okay, next question.
Okay, that's from me, Rabbi. In Matthew 24, we're talking about those that have been led away by the false prophets. How would we know? I guess I know the teaching, beware false prophets, but how do we know? How is that possible? How if we're in the walk, we know, I mean, we're listening to you. How could yet we know some still get led away? I mean, how do we start recognizing that, or is there, does it just happen at once, or is it just a little by little? I know you've talked about just that if you don't go those little minor course corrections, you eventually find yourself off. How do we start recognizing that, or is it possible?
I have a special decoder ring. It glows a certain color when no. Look at the example in Scripture. And somebody thinking, what example in Scripture? Well, what about there were those that were following Yeshua, and then he said something they didn't like. Now, up to that point, they recognized him as anointed and appointed, a special teacher with a unique ability to communicate the word with authority. And then they let their feelings and their emotions and their preferences change how they saw him because he said something they didn't like. Okay? Which happens to a lot of people that come here and then leave, is that they'll come here because they believe that I have this job to do. Then I'll say or do something they don't like and they leave. It doesn't change that I'm either that person or not, okay? But that's their flesh not being able to process that part, which happened to the people following Yeshua, right? They could not process when he started talking about, well, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood and blah, blah, blah. Then they were like, oh my gosh, this guy's a psycho cannibal. They couldn't balance that with the idea that I know he is who he is, so the problem must be in how I'm interpreting it. Okay? As opposed to, nah, I don't like what he's saying, so he can't possibly be what I thought he was. Now, of course, if what the person's saying is against the Torah, well, now we're dealing with an actual false teacher. And then if you come to, because you've sat with other teachers and came to recognize, no, that's not right. No, that's not right because I don't like it. No, it's just not right. You know? And then, because I don't know how people go for me, and I know some of the places that they're going, and they're teaching stuff that's just not right. And yet they're happier over there. I said, fine, be happier over there. I don't understand that. Well, but they're not getting my personality coming from their microphone over there. They're getting a different personality from the microphone over there. And sometimes that's what it comes down to, okay? But if you're going to believe, two pieces of this puzzle I'll give you, right? If you're going to believe that Paul was right when he said there's going to be these people you need to help you, and if you're going to believe that you are drawn and connected to the Father through what's called the Ruach, and the Ruach is there to help you, then you have to believe that the Ruach will help you to identify those guys Paul was talking about. Now the problem is when your flesh gets in the way of that. Because initially your flesh doesn't. Well, not necessarily. Some of you didn't like me the first time you heard me. You had to come back later. Some of you have told me that. Oh yeah, somebody gave me a thing to listen to. I was like, that guy's a jerk. That guy's whatever. I said, fine. And then like a year later, you're like, wow, that's true. That's just truth, you know? And so this is a process between you and the Father, and at some point you have to trust him and trust the process through him, okay? And, you know, listen to Billy's teaching on that, right? Trust the process. And so that's the best I could do for you. I mean, it ultimately comes down to, at some point, recognizing who Yeshua is, then you follow Yeshua. Then you have teachers. And so some people had to recognize that John was who he was, or Peter, or Shaul, Paul, whatever. That you recognize that this is, because they didn't all know him. The apostles, when they were teaching after Yeshua died, not everybody who met the apostles realized that he was with them. Like, because they weren't there watching them walk around the streets with Yeshua for those couple of years. They met these guys way after the fact, 15, 20 years later or whatever it was. And they're claiming they have these experiences. They're going to have to believe it or not. They're going to have to trust it or not. So at some point you have to get to that place. But then through prayer and through submission, if you recognize that somebody is anointed and appointed or is not, then you need to act appropriately, especially if you recognize they're not. Okay, then if you know they're not, why do you still sit under them? Why do you still listen to them? Why do you, whatever? I don't know. Well, because I like them, blah, blah, blah. All right. That's the flesh talking. Okay? I was about to say something. Well, I'll say it anyway. I don't want to get in trouble with Yahweh on this, but I don't think that he cares this much about what you like. Okay? I think he knows what's good for you, and he knows that you'll like it when you get there, but I don't think he cares about your opinion about what you like. Okay? Well, I like him. I like that teacher. I like this. I like that. And I was like, so what? What's that have to do with anything? That's not to say he doesn't want you to like stuff. I mean, he tells you through David that if you embrace his stuff, you'll think it's sweeter than honey and more precious than gold, and you'll love it. But the like thing is more of a preference, okay? We don't do things we don't like, not easily. Now, things that we love, or the result that we're going to get that we love, we'll go through mountains and all kinds of hardships for something that's behind love. But if it's just about like, we're not doing it. I don't like to do it. I'm not doing it. But I'll do things with my wife I don't like doing, but I'll do it because I love her, right? Do you understand? But I don't like doing it. Well, there's things that you can't eat anymore. But that shouldn't be a big deal because you love him, right? Oh, but I like bacon. I like whatever, lobster, something, whatever you like. So what? I don't care if you liked it or not. If you love him, it won't make any difference, okay? So love and like are completely different issues. So a lot of things happen, the same thing with this teaching problem, Rob, is that people are getting their emotions in there, okay? And by the way, I did notice how you, with your authority over there, made sure that your wife and you got to ask the first questions. That was well played. Okay.
From Elizabeth, is Matthew 24:12 connected in any way to Revelation 3:16?
No, not really. All right, so Revelation 3:16 says, because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I'm going to vomit you out of your mouth. No, Revelation is talking about complacency, okay? And that's an attitude, internal, that's a spirit in you, like not a spirit like an outside being, like it's an intrinsic nature you can get to. The behavior of cold in Matthew 24 is that false teachers are teaching and people are buying into it, and now they're behaving in a way that's lawless, okay? And so their love to do Torah has grown cold. This is people who are they're not hot or cold, they're just lukewarm, complacent, they're not motivated in any direction. They don't care. They're not driven at all. It's a different problem, okay?
Pete and Brenda Lamb says, Rabbi, would you agree that trust equals the absence of suspicion and the abundance of submission?
Yes, I would say that.
And I got one more, last one I got online right now. Is Daniel Woods, do you think there will be well, I don't know if this would be even on subject, but do you think there would be an odd transition in the kingdom that when we actually experience Yahweh's true personality?
Look, I think it's going to be, just the most mind-blowing, bizarre, whatever experience of all time when we get changed from what we are into what he is. Because we cannot really understand, fathom, imagine what that really will be like. So no matter what you thought, when you actually get to experience it, it will still blow your mind. But because we will have been changed into what he is, we'll be able to handle it, which is what John tells us, right? 1 John, okay? But I think that, he's only telling us what he tells us in the book because he puts it in terms that we can digest and understand. But again, we go back to my hopefully inspired analogy about the amoeba and the human being. I mean, I think if an amoeba got turned into one of us, it would have a mind-blowing experience too. But it still would be one of us and be able to handle it to whatever degree, right? Because now it's a human being and it's got the brain capacity, the emotion capacity that an amoeba doesn't have. And so when we get changed into him, I think so. But I think that, eye is not seen and ear is not heard or whatever. I mean, what's really going on and what's really out there is going to be. Now, I don't think it'll be any doubt that it'll be better and bigger and more amazing, but we can't even imagine, okay? What we imagine is enough to motivate us, and that's why it gives us that, all right? It's enough to tell us we'll get to live forever, there'll be no pain, and it'll wipe away every tear and all that kind of stuff. That's enough to say, I'm in. Okay? Now, the other stuff, not I'm in, I said I'm in. Right? I'm in, I want to do it, I want that. All right? It motivates us. Because if he showed us what it really looks like, we'd be like, we can't even process that. So at this level, it's enough to say, you'll get to be with me forever, and there will be no more tears and no more pain and no more suffering. That's enough for all of us to say, please, I want that. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for the teaching. That was awesome. 17:6, 17:9, really, and then the last one was 17:26. That was, when I read those verses, to me, I just saw Yeshua's heart, which is the Father's heart, right? The 6 says, to the man whom you gave me out of this world. In his compassion, he gave us, he gave Yeshua us, which is out of the blue. I don't understand that, but he did. And then 17:9, it says, when he's praying for us, and to me, it's just how the heart of a servant, how much the humility that he had to actually, and what an honor that he would pray for us. And then 17:26, when he's saying that, he wants us to have the love that the Father has for him, for Yeshua, him being the only Son, and he was given everything, all authority over flesh, for him to want us to have that love that the Father has for him. That's just mind-blowing. It's just beautiful, these verses. So that was a quick comment. And then I have a question, or another comment, I guess. Matthew 24:12, when it says that the love of many will become cold, and you were saying that it's because of false teachers, but could it also be that the love, we were saying the love to follow Torah, which is to do our utmost with all we have to follow Torah, that's really on us to keep reviving, I guess, that desire to follow him, right? Is that connected to that a bit? So we shouldn't allow that love and that walk to become cold?
Correct. Well, look, remember, it's not just bad teaching or false teaching. It's that people choose to be led. It says they will lead many astray, which means people want what they're selling, okay? And they're going to go and buy into what they're selling, and they're going to follow it, all right? Remember, it says the false teachers will lead many astray. When we think about the shepherd and the sheep are like, yes, let's go follow that shepherd, And they're going to be loving what they're following over that direction.
Yeah, very good, thank you. And then, Rabbi, the last one, Hebrews 10:25, I think is what you were saying, nor forsaking the assembly of ourselves together,
Yes.
as in the habit of some, but encouraging, and so much more as you see the day coming near. And I was thinking that is that also to protect us? When we're together under
Sure.
your leadership and we're not astray, we cannot be misled.
Absolutely.
Or walk away from the path. Okay, good. Thank you.
Absolutely. And look, if you don't all assemble together like we need to, we might not be able to find a fourth to play spades with. So, that's a joke.
Hi,
Justin.
Rabbi. Well, I kind of have, first off, about assembling. You had that talk with me. I have no excuse as close as I live. And that really rang true with me big time, and it's blessed me because I have no excuse. So purpose of moving here, purpose of coming here, why wouldn't I be here every chance I can get? So.
Well, I will say that I almost want to sit down with some of the people that moved here and ask them, why did you move here? Because some of them, I don't understand why you're here, since you don't really make the effort to be participating in part. You moved your whole life here, and then we don't see you, you don't participate. I don't know. Well, everybody didn't just welcome me in as their best friend the first day. Well, that's not going to happen. We're dealing with people and all their flaws. But you keep coming, And so I don't, if I moved all the way here to be a part of this, I would, like a lot of you do, not all, but a lot of you do. I'd come to everything, and I'd be everywhere, and especially when I find out they're going to go out and eat afterwards, and I get to hang out and spend time, and well, I can't afford to do that. So a lot of people come out, they just don't even eat when they go, if they can't afford it. They just come and spend time. Okay? But there's times that we spend together where we're just being together. Which is why, by the way, I go out with everybody often enough, is because I know that's an important relationship building thing, even though it's not my personality to want to do that, okay? But I understand how important it is. And I always feel very moved to see how excited you guys get when I go, because you appreciate that I'm going to come and spend the time with you. And by the way, we get excited with all of you when you show up. If any of you that don't normally come would show up, we'll all be like, oh, look, you came to come with us tonight, and we're so excited. So, and we do go out a lot. After Torah study, after Shabbat, after sundown, after oneg. It's weird. We eat, and then we go out and we eat. Strange and peculiar nation, okay? Of course, by the time we eat the second time, it's been 4 hours after the last time. So, it's reasonable that we're hungry again. But we hang out, because some of you are watching this live stream going, man, this service ever going to end? Yes, and then we're going to eat, and then we're going to hang out after that, and then we're going to go out and spend more time together. Okay? So if you come to visit, come ready, come well rested, and come hungry. Okay, so. All right, Justin.
So come to get fed in more ways than one.
That's right. Well, some of them come and get fed up, but that's the problem. So not that way. It says more way than one. That's not the one that you want to be doing.
No. So my question is kind of 13 through 15 here, 16. And my question is about being set apart in the world. In the world, hating them because they're not of the world. And my question to that is, where I came from, I have been covenanted and was hoped to be set apart, but like the company I worked for wasn't. But it takes me back to our last Torah portion, and my employer at the time found favor, so to say, in me. I got every feast off, every Sabbath. He took very good care of me. How does that, apply in the sense of, when your neighbors don't hate you, you don't really have enemies yet, you're trying to walk this out, and you don't really feel as though the world in any part hates you?
Well, it's not saying that the world, is required that you're experiencing this. He's just saying as a general concept, and you talk to people in here, they will tell you how, they've been treated by their family members that are still mainstream or of some level of Christianity, and when they do, and this doesn't come up until you don't do something they want you to do. Like when you say, I can't come to Christmas dinner. Now you're going to find out that they hate you. Not really hate you, but they're going to treat you in a way you don't desire to be treated, right? They're going to throw some anger and bitterness in your direction. It's not always hate, but it's just that negative, emotion. And so it's, when you say no to going to the wedding on Saturday or the funeral on Saturday, when you say no to, they don't want to hear you say no because of your beliefs. Well, I can't do that because of my beliefs. Then they get angry. So that's what he's talking about, okay? All right. Oscar.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Appreciate the teaching. And again, I wholeheartedly in agreement with all that you have taught with regards to love and Torah. So I preface that by saying that because, of course, in the religious world, in the religious system, they always go back to other verses to try to contradict what you just shared with us. And specifically going to like Galatians 5. The first 4 verses, and then verse 18, especially when they say, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under Torah. How do we deal with situations like that when they come at us with those particular verses?
Okay, because again, they don't understand what the phrase means. If you don't understand language, you're going to get it all wrong. Okay, if you are led by the Ruach HaKodesh, then you are going to keep Torah. So then you won't be under the penalty that you get for breaking Torah. Paul's trying to kind of connect these dots, but there's connection issues that people have because of language barriers and the translation of the language barriers. And so, because Paul did not write this in English. Okay. Okay, so then let's just kind of, you said verse 18, but what else did you say?
The first 4 verses as well. Of course, they go to, again, with the part of it being the circumcision and that being no longer necessary, that type of thing.
Look, I'm not going to deal with Galatians today, but I'll give you the same thing I always tell everybody. Because Galatians is a book or a letter that you have to understand more than most, I guess, full context. Paul's writing, okay, context is always who's writing, who's the audience, and why. I mean, what is the point? Is there a message? Is there a reason for this letter? And there is. He is mad. I was going to use a different word, but he is not happy. He is PO'd, as they say, with these people. But you have to know why. And it's not because they decided to covenant and keep Torah. Okay? He's mad because they're heading in a direction of either Orthodox Judaism or the Essene asceticism. It's a wrong mindset that they're gaining. It's not what he taught them, okay, in the context of Messiah. And so he's frustrated with them. He's like, I didn't teach you to act this way, okay? So when you look at Galatians, it has to be understood in its context, and that's where we're going to run into a real big problem. You know, he starts off in chapter 3, he says, oh, you stupid Galatians. You know, he is frustrated, but he's not frustrated after teaching them the law and bringing the law in the context of Messiah to them, that they're keeping the law now. There was a lot of very strong Jewish sects at the time, okay? There was not just, as we think of today, Orthodox and conservative and Reform. There was, like Christianity is today, it was hundreds and hundreds of different flavors of Judaism. And these people who were Gentile to begin with, they were coming into belief and covenant, where a lot of them, which I see happen here also, okay, not in this congregation fully, although 3 or 4 people over the years have done this, they come in, they get excited about Torah, they run right into Judaism, okay? And that could absolutely be a part of what's going on here. You have to understand, he's trying to make a case, but the language he's using, the terms he's using is going to be confusing if you don't get the context right. All right? So when he says not under the law, and by the way, when you see the word Torah anywhere in the New Testament, it never says that word anywhere. It is a choice of translation of the word law, nomia, okay? And so they don't actually put the word Torah anywhere. So now we have to have a choice in translating whether or not the law they're talking about is just law or is it Torah law, okay? So when he says about being under law, which law are we talking about? And so when we talk about things like the book of the law, which is something he talks about in Galatians, I believe, there's a law the Essenes have, or a book the Essenes had called the book of the law, which is all about washings and rituals and all this other stuff that was not a part of the Torah that given on Sinai, not a part of what Paul was teaching them, and they may have started to embrace all that. Okay? So one day we'll go through Galatians. But understand, for Oscar, for your point of view, when you're looking at this stuff and your friends are throwing that at you, the answer that you need to give is a very simple one. If Paul is saying what they believe he's saying, then Paul is a heretic and needs to be thrown out. So there's a choice. Either he's saying it that way and he's a heretic, or he's not saying it that way and you're just not understanding him. Because what you must know is, even if you don't necessarily know what he is saying, you should know what he can't be saying. Okay? Which your Christian friends don't know. They don't know that he can't be saying this. That breaks everything in Scripture. If he's saying that the Torah is a problem and it's done away with and all. If he's actually saying any of that stuff, he's Deuteronomy 13, needs to be stoned and killed. Okay? False prophet. So easier for you, and I've done this in many discussions with people when they want to argue this stuff, I say, fine. If that's what Paul's saying, because they're making this argument, I said, fine. Then you need to know that makes him a heretic and you need to throw him out. And they look at me like aghast, like, how could you say that? I said, because he can't be saying that and be appropriately in your book. Because he goes then against, if that's true what he's saying, the way you believe it, then he's going against everything else that everybody else says. And so then you have Paulianity, which is your Christianized version of whatever Paul said, which is antithetical to everything else. You just pull him out and just run your religion based on that. Okay? And you're not just pulling him out because he actually said it, but you're looking at translations of translations into English of what people thought he was saying. All right? And so let's just keep that in mind, that don't always feel you have to know how to explain what Paul is saying. It's enough if you can explain what he can't be saying and why he can't be saying it. All right? Does that make sense? All right, good. All right, Harold.
Just got a comment about not coming when the place is open for Erev Shabbat or whatever. We had talked about this last year sometime, and basically I said I didn't move here 2,000 miles to stay at home. And if most of us move here because we believe Yahweh's anointing is on you and on this place. And if that's the case, the Torah says that we should be there. And as far as like the first part of your teaching, love and Torah, if we love him, we'll follow his Torah. So if that's the case, we should be here. And by being here, I know we all have issues with different people. Abrasive to other, I know I can be abrasive to people. People can be abrasive to me. And basically, if we come together, slowly you can learn, hopefully, to put up with what that's being abrasive to you, or to be less abrasive to the people. If we can do that by being together, then we can go further toward the other part of it, where we got to love one another.
Amen. Amen. Well said. All right, look, I want to say something. Hopefully you'll take it the right way, okay? I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself or that I value myself in any kind of way, but let me just make a point. If Peter or John or even Shaul were here, right, and they were going to go out to eat with everybody after the oneg, if you were tired, would you still want to go? If you were, is there anything that would keep you from going? You'd want to be there, right? Now, I'm not, again, this is not me trying to equate myself with one of them. But I'm just saying is, you make excuses, well, I'm tired and I got this and I got that. Well, then you're saying that you value those things more than valuing your time with me and the rest of this group. And the reason I say the rest of this group is because I'm not always there, but they are. And Rebbitzin is, and you should be wanting to spend time with her, okay? And I promise you, when it comes to going out, she's a whole lot more fun than I am, okay? She enjoys it, she has a great time, okay? But the thing is, what you're saying is you're valuing this other stuff above this. Oh, you would show up if Paul was there. Why wouldn't you show up just because you guys are there? Okay? Why wouldn't you just want to spend that time? Okay? Look, back in the day, a long time ago, I was in those multi-level things and everything like a lot of people were in the 80s and whatever. And I'll tell you what, when I went to a place where they were having a gathering of any kind of meeting, I got there when it started and I left when the last person left that had anything I might glean from, just in case they said anything of use to my business. And by the same token, if I was a member of this congregation, I'd be wherever the teacher was in case he said something I could use, okay? And some of that stuff happens at 2 a.m. in a parking lot, okay? That's happened. We've had some really incredible conversations sitting in front of City Cafe in a parking lot at 2, 3 a.m. But a lot of times nothing happens, just the relationship building. So it's not like it's always about some sort of nugget of information, but you want that relationship. And not just with me. I'm a little tougher to have relationships with anyway. I don't have that blue side, but with each other. Why would you want to go and hang out with each other and spend more time with each other? I know you already do because you guys stay here until we throw you out anyway. But only some of you do. Some of you, as soon as we're done, you leave. I don't know why. I don't know where you go. Or some of you, worse than that, are having little gatherings at your house for the small group of your little clique instead of being here with everybody else. Okay? I don't know why you're doing that either. I'm not judging it. I don't care. It's interesting. Because, like I said during the teaching, your behavior is what will demonstrate that the Father sent the Son, right? In other words, they see in what you do that you're being Yeshua-like or not. Your actions speak louder than your words. I get to learn a lot about you based on what you choose to do. And when you choose to be with the body, it tells me a lot. When you choose to be in a separate little group to yourselves, it tells me a lot. I'm not judging any of it. I don't care. It's disappointing. It's disappointing. And that's why the scripture is there. Paul wouldn't have said it if it didn't need to be said. Okay? Although actually I'm not sure who wrote that book, okay? But, because we don't really know who wrote Hebrews. But the idea of not forsaking the assembling, it's in your book because you're supposed to hear that. Because it was a problem then, it's a problem now. Okay? Which means that somebody valued something above being with the brothers. And I think that's very sad. Okay? I think it's very sad. Okay? Now, that being said, are the children down? We're all good? All right. So